There are moments in life when everything around you feels ordinary, predictable, sequential, like a clock ticking endlessly forward, measuring days that feel like echoes of the last. And then, suddenly, there's a rupture, a glimpse, a fleeting awareness that something deeper pulses beneath the fabric of what we call reality, something not bound by calendars or equations, not written in textbooks or plastered across screens. It's in the silence between words, the shiver down your spine, when you sense something more. Not more in quantity, but more in quality. More real than what you've been told is real. This whisper beneath the surface is not new, it is ancient, and it speaks not in sentences, but in patterns, rhythms, codes. 4, to be exact, not by coincidence, not by superstition, but by design, an architecture so refined, so precisely woven into your body, your breath, your memories, that you stopped noticing it altogether. Yet it never stopped noticing you. For centuries, mystics, sages, philosophers, and visionaries from every corner of the earth spoke of these fourfold truths, hidden in plain sight, etched into temples, sung through chants, painted into mandalas. Indigenous medicine wheels, elemental systems, sacred geometry, even the quantum breakdown of matter, all echoed the same mysterious structure. But something happened. A forgetting. Not the kind that comes from age, but the kind engineered by systems built to divide. The kind of forgetting that replaces wonder with fact, intuition with data, wholeness with fragmentation. And yet, the code remains, breathing beneath your thoughts, shifting behind your experiences, waiting, not for proof, but for remembrance. The first time you see it, truly see it, it's not in a textbook or a lecture. It's when you realize your life itself has been unfolding in cycles of 4. The 4 seasons, not just of the earth, but of your growth. Times of becoming, times of burning, times of breaking, times of rest. The 4 directions that compass not only the land, but your choices. The 4 elements that don't just shape nature, but mirror your body, your emotions, your mind, your soul. And if you look closely, closer than you've ever dared, you'll see the same symmetry encoded in science itself. 4 DNA base pairs forming the architecture of life. 4 states of matter structuring the physical world. 4 fundamental forces holding the universe together. And still, we call this coincidence, as if reality accidentally designed itself to match our oldest metaphors. But what if they weren't metaphors? What if they were blueprints? Not poetic symbols, but sacred signatures etched by a consciousness so vast it needed no language, only pattern. To understand the 4 forgotten codes is not to study an idea. It is to awaken a memory that lives in your bones, a rhythm that your heartbeat knows, but your mind resists. It is to stop measuring life by the metrics they gave you, and to start feeling it through the layers of awareness that were muted by noise, trauma, and cultural sleep. Because the truth is, reality is not random, it's recursive, intelligent, designed. And if you learn to see its underlying scaffolding, the 4 interlocking keys that govern how time flows, how energy moves, how manifestation unfolds, then life no longer feels like something happening to you. It begins to feel like something pulsing through you. This journey is not about adding more knowledge to your mind. It's about excavating what's already there, the intuitive genius, the ancient knowing, the sacred logic buried beneath conditioning. These codes are not something you learn. They are something you remember, because they are already operating within you, whether you know it or not. You may have sensed them in dreams that felt more real than waking life, in moments of déjà vu that stopped time, in the resonance of ancient places, in symbols you've never studied but inexplicably understand. You've touched them in silence. You've heard them in the wind. You felt them when words failed, but something deeper moved. And so we begin. We are not here to theorize. We are here to reunite with the divine architecture beneath experience, to trace the golden threads that connect thought to form, time to memory, emotion to matter. To remember that everything, yes, everything, has structure. And the structure is four. This is not numerology. It is not mysticism in the dismissive sense. It is the forgotten language of creation, the primal algorithm behind movement, meaning, memory, and manifestation. It is the silent symmetry that birthed galaxies and beats your heart in the same breath. To enter this space is to leave behind linearity, to unhook from the false grid of randomness and re-enter the spiral of remembrance. This is where logic meets beauty, where vibration becomes vision, where the body remembers its role as temple, transmitter, and timekeeper. Welcome to the unraveling of the illusion. Welcome to the decoding of the real. Welcome to the four forgotten codes that unlock time, energy, and the structure of reality. To grasp the essence of the four forgotten codes, we must first understand that what we call reality is not a fixed backdrop upon which life unfolds, but a malleable field shaped by attention, intention, resonance, and rhythm. It is not a stage but a mirror, not a machine but a song. And like any symphony, it is governed by structure, repeating cycles, harmonic intervals, and archetypal scaffolding. At the center of it all is a sacred tetrad, a four-part pulse that bridges inner and outer, seen and unseen, thought and manifestation. These codes are not abstract philosophies. They are the primal blueprints beneath all form. They are the undercurrent of everything you touch, breathe, feel, and become. And they have names, not rigid dogmatic labels, but archetypal forces recognized across time by sages, mystics, and scientists alike. Earth, water, fire, air. These are not just elements, they are functions, layers of being, currents of energy that move through your mind, your biology, your emotions, your dreams. Earth is not merely the ground beneath your feet. It is structure, stability, memory, and density. It is the code that governs the physical body, the root system of your incarnation. Every cell, every bone, every breath you take is an expression of this code. It holds you in form. It gives your spirit a place to land. Water flows. It bends. It remembers. It feels. Water is the emotional body, the vibrational field in which all experience is stored. And just as rivers carve landscapes, your emotions shape the topography of your inner world. To deny water is to dam intuition. To master it is to reclaim the currents of creation. Fire is the spark, not just of light, but of thought. It is the mental body, the forge of perception, the code that shapes direction and decision. It is your will, your belief, your vision. When scattered, it burns. When focused, it illuminates. Fire is the architect of reality, and your thoughts are its tools. And air is spirit, breath, the bridge between worlds. It is the whisper before the word, the silence behind sound, the knowing that precedes logic. It is the spiritual body, the etheric thread that connects you to the infinite. To breathe is to participate in the divine. To inhale is to remember you are never alone. Each of these elements is a code, and each code has a domain, not just externally, but within you. Earth is your body, water is your heart, fire is your mind, air is your soul. They do not compete, they co-create. They interlock like sacred architecture, forming a structure through which consciousness can express itself in time. But the forgetting came when these domains were separated, when spirit was exiled from science, when emotion was seen as weakness, when thought was divorced from body, and when body became just biology. This fragmentation created a distorted reality, a world where people chase wholeness while unknowingly rejecting the very ingredients of it. The four codes were once honored not just in esoteric temples, but in every aspect of life. The four seasons guided harvests and healing. The four directions were consulted before journeys. The four phases of the moon dictated ceremony. The four chambers of the heart were seen as sacred. But in the modern era, wholeness was dismantled in favor of efficiency. Pattern was replaced by parts. cycles by lines, spirit by system. Still, the codes endure, embedded in your cells, your sleep cycles, your brainwaves. They are echoed in the four primary states of matter: solid, liquid, gas, and plasma, reflected in the four fundamental forces of the universe: gravity, electromagnetism, strong force, and weak force. Encoded in the four base pairs of DNA: adenine, thymine, guanine, cytosine, elemental forces masquerading as biochemistry. And time too follows this pattern: childhood, youth, adulthood, old age. Not linear steps, but spirals of return, each stage offering a lesson from one of the four codes: embodiment, emotion, thought, transcendence. Even consciousness moves through four gates: beta, alpha, theta, delta, frequencies of awareness that govern how you perceive and create reality. Beta is the outer world. Alpha is emotion and imagination. Theta is subconscious knowing. Delta is communion with Source. They are not random. They are aligned with the elemental currents of your being. Beta is earth. Alpha is water. Theta is fire. Delta is air. The entire structure is fractal, self-similar, across layers, repeating itself like sacred geometry from molecule to mind. The challenge is not to find these codes. They were never truly lost. The challenge is to remember them, not as external systems, but as living principles within you. They are not a belief system. They are not religious doctrine. They are the divine anatomy of reality. And when you understand how they move, within your emotions, your thoughts, your breath, your body, you begin to move with them, not against them. You begin to see that energy does not respond to effort. It responds to coherence. And coherence comes when the four codes are aligned, when your thoughts match your feelings, when your body reflects your beliefs, when your actions mirror your spirit. This is the doorway to mastery. This is the foundation of all manifestation. Because when you align the four, you don't just change your mood or your mindset, you change the field around you. You become a tuning fork for a different frequency of reality, one that bends time, clarifies energy, and reveals the structure behind all things. But this is just the beginning. To truly remember the four codes is not to study them as information, but to feel them moving through story, symbol, and synchronicity. Because what the intellect learns, the soul remembers through myth. And so the codes were never meant to be taught like facts. They were meant to be transmitted through metaphor, parable, and archetype. The ancients knew this. That is why temples were built in sacred ratios. That is why stories passed down by oral tradition carried layers far deeper than their surface suggested. Not all truth wears a straight face. Sometimes truth is draped in symbol so that only those with eyes to see may find it. Let us begin with the first code, Earth. Imagine a vast field in winter. Everything above the surface appears dead. The trees are skeletal, the soil is hard, and the air is quiet. But beneath the silence, something stirs. Roots are deepening. Seeds are gestating. The earth is not dead, it is dreaming. This is the code of structure, the domain of incubation and form. In your life, this energy moves through seasons when everything seems still, when you feel like nothing is happening. But within the invisible, a blueprint is forming. You are being rooted, stabilized, structured. These are the moments the modern mind rushes to escape, the void, the pause, the silence, not realizing these are the moments when the deepest transformations are seeded. In the great myth cycles of old, this is the underworld journey, the descent into the womb of the earth, where heroes lose their way only to return with vision. In Egyptian lore, Osiris is dismembered and buried, only to be reassembled and reborn through Isis. In Sumerian myth, Inanna descends through 7 gates before she rises renewed. These are not simply stories of gods, they are blueprints of your own becoming. Earth teaches you that form requires dissolution, that sometimes what appears to be death is the prelude to deeper life, and that silence is not absence, It is alignment waiting to emerge. Then comes the second code, water. Here we enter the river of emotion, memory, and reflection. Picture a lake at dusk. Its surface is glass, perfectly still, until the slightest breath of wind or a single stone sends ripples across it. Water teaches that your emotions are not flaws to be fixed, but feedback from a deeper flow. They reflect what you're aligned with, or resisting. Just as water carves stone over time, your feelings shape the trajectory of your inner landscape. They teach you what you love, what you fear, what you carry, and what you've buried. In the ancient world, water was sacred because it remembered, it mirrored, it responded. In the tale of Narcissus, it was not the flower that bore the lesson. It was the pool in which he gazed. Emotion, when misunderstood, becomes vanity. But when honored, it becomes insight. The sacred rivers of lore, the Ganges, the Nile, the Jordan, were never just geographical features. They were living metaphors for the emotional body, ever-flowing, ever-changing, always returning. In your life, water whispers through tears, longing, dreams, and déjà vu. It tells you where you are still holding, where you are still healing. It invites you to stop controlling the current and begin surrendering to its wisdom. The third code, fire, arrives as the flash of vision, the sacred torch, the burning bush, the forge. Imagine Prometheus stealing fire from the gods to bring light to humanity. Not just physical light, but the flame of consciousness, thought, will, choice. The fire is your capacity to direct reality. It does not ask you to wait, it dares you to act. And yet, when fire is untamed, it becomes destruction, obsession, chaos. Think of Icarus, flying too close to the sun, vision without grounding, desire without wisdom. Fire is the code of the mind, but also the ego. It's the sword that cuts both ways. It can illuminate your path or burn down your illusions. In the tarot, fire is the suit of wands, inspiration, passion, creation. But behind every wand is a question. What are you creating, and from where? Fire asks you not just to think, but to focus, to become the torchbearer in your own life, to lead your inner revolution. And then air, the final and most mysterious of the four. It cannot be touched, yet it moves all things. It is the breath of spirit, the space between beats, the current that carries prayer. In Hindu philosophy, it is prana, the life force. In the Hebrew tradition, ruach, divine breath. In Egypt, the ankh symbolized not just life, but breath infused with eternity. Air is not emptiness, it is awareness. If earth is the root, water the flow, fire the direction, then air is the lift, the divine wind that aligns you with unseen realms. It whispers through intuition, symbols, dreams, and moments of uncanny clarity. Air is what you cannot prove, but know. It's what arrives when you quiet the mind enough to hear the soul. It's the message behind the moment, the presence behind the personality. One of the most powerful symbols of air is the eagle. High above the earth, it sees all, yet chooses when to dive. It teaches perspective, detachment, precision. In shamanic traditions, the eagle represents the east, the place of vision, awakening, and new beginnings. Air, therefore, is not passive. It is preparation. It is alignment with the unspoken truth behind form. When you weave these stories together, earth's depth, water's emotion, fire's will, and air's spirit, you are not just learning about nature. You are decoding yourself, because you are not separate from these forces. You are the meeting place where they converge. You are the fifth, the integration, the bridge, the living mandala through which the universe becomes aware of itself. And the ancients knew this. That's why they aligned their temples with the four cardinal directions, divided their mandalas into quadrants, built medicine wheels in fours, because they weren't decorating, they were encoding, embedding memory into structure, leaving maps for those who would one day wake up and ask, Why does this feel familiar? Because it is. There is a sacred moment when insight must cross the threshold into embodiment, when truth, no longer content to rest in the realm of thought, begins to flow through your fingers, your voice, your choices. This is the passage we now enter, where the four forgotten codes step out of myth and into motion, and the spiral of understanding becomes the dance of integration. The question is not whether the codes are real, you felt them. The question is, will you live them? Begin with Earth, the code of form, structure, and embodiment. In your daily life, Earth speaks through routine, through rhythm, through grounded choices that honor the temple of your body. It's easy to think of spirituality as something abstract or ethereal. But if the body is ignored, no truth can fully land. Earth asks, where are you rooted? Not just geographically, but energetically. Do your habits reflect your values? Does your physical environment support your becoming or drain it? To live the Earth Code is to become intentional with form. What you eat, how you move, how you rest, your connection to place, to nature, to the ancient pulse of the soil. Earth is slow wisdom. It teaches you to honor cycles rather than rush them. To listen to the seasons, not just outside, but inside. When you feel ungrounded, anxious, scattered, often what's missing is not more thought, but more earth, more presence, more embodiment, more simplicity. Water enters through emotion. It shows up when you sit with what you feel, rather than distract yourself from it. When you cry not as collapse, but as cleansing. When you allow emotion to be sacred, not shameful. So many live lives of silent disconnection because they've been taught to fear their own feelings. But water reminds you, what flows, heals. What is repressed, recycles. To live this code means to develop emotional fluency, to stop categorizing feelings as good or bad, and start seeing them as guidance systems. Jealousy points toward hidden desire. Grief honors what mattered. Fear guards the doorway of transformation. When you feel stuck in loops, repeating patterns, relationships, breakdowns, ask yourself, what emotion have I not let flow? You may find that the dam is internal, and the key is surrender. Fire. This is where we begin to shape, to choose, to become creators instead of reactors. The fire code shows up in how you direct your energy, your thoughts, your focus. Every word you speak carries frequency. Every belief you rehearse becomes architecture. Fire doesn't just burn, it builds, but only when focused. So ask, where is my attention going? Are you fueling what you fear? Are you imagining worst-case outcomes and calling it realism? Or are you aligning thought with vision, belief with intention, word with will? Fire requires discipline. Not in the restrictive sense, but in the sacred sense. Like tending a flame. You cannot force fire to burn brighter, but you can clear the debris, remove the wind, and nurture the conditions where it can rise. This is where affirmations become more than cliches. When repeated with presence, they become commands to the field. When paired with elevated emotion, they rewire your neurobiology. Fire is the realm of deliberate creation, of saying, I am, not I hope. It is the internal ignition that precedes external transformation. Then air, perhaps the most elusive, yet most essential. It integrates through stillness, silence, breath, and insight. The air code moves when you stop, when you listen, when you let go of needing to know, and instead open to receive. This is the code that speaks when logic ends. That reveals the path when effort surrenders. Air enters your life when you choose to trust that what you cannot see is no less real. To live this code means creating space, not just on your calendar, but in your mind. Meditation, breathwork, dream journaling, time in nature without a goal, these are not luxuries. They are technologies, gateways, ways to reconnect with the part of you that never forgot. When you're rushing, striving, grasping, you are in resistance. When you pause, breathe, listen, you return to the field. You'll find that the more you embody all 4 codes, the more your external world begins to shift. Not because you're forcing change, but because you're moving in coherence. When Earth is honored, your health strengthens, your space clears, your time becomes sacred. When water flows, relationships deepen, emotions stabilize, creativity returns. When fire is focused, goals align, synchronicities increase, vision clarifies. When air expands, inspiration lands, guidance emerges, peace returns. These codes are not isolated rituals. They are lenses through which to live. You can use them in conversation, grounding into earth when emotions rise, flowing like water when conflict arises, igniting fire when decision is needed, softening into air when silence is the best response. You can apply them to healing, balancing the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual dimensions. You can use them to create, building projects, relationships, and realities that reflect your wholeness instead of your wounds. And most importantly, you can use them to return to yourself, because in a world that constantly fragments your attention, commodifies your energy, and pulls you out of rhythm, the greatest rebellion is to live in coherence with the codes that built the stars and shaped your soul. Not someday, not after enlightenment. Now, you were never meant to walk this world half alive, half seeing, half remembering who you are. The codes were not lost. You were simply taught to look away, to focus outward, to chase validation, to forget the architecture of your own soul. But you felt them all along, in the timing of synchronicities that arrive too perfectly to be dismissed, in the pull of sacred symbols that speak a language you've never studied, but instantly understand. In the moments of stillness when something ancient within you stirs, stretches, and whispers, you were never separate. This is not about becoming something new. It is about returning, not backwards in time, but inward, downward, deeper, into the spiral, into the pattern, into the rhythm beneath reality, into the 4 codes, not as abstract principles, but as living intelligences, not as teachings, but as mirrors. Because the truth is, every moment of fragmentation, every time you felt lost, overwhelmed, disconnected, was not a failure. It was a signal, a sacred summons calling you back into alignment. Earth called when your body ached, when exhaustion became chronic, when you felt unrooted, untethered, unclear. It asked you to return to form, to breathe, to rest, to honor the vessel that carries your light. Water called when your heart overflowed, when grief came in waves, when old wounds resurfaced in new disguises. It asked you not to fix, but to feel, not to numb, but to move, to soften into sensation without shame. Fire called when your mind raced, when vision flared and faded, when frustration built at the threshold of change. It asked you to focus, to choose, to declare what you truly desire and walk toward it with precision. And air called when silence became golden, when logic failed and intuition rose, when the answers came not from effort, but from surrender. It asked you to listen, to remember, to return to the breath, the presence, the infinite that lives in the unseen. You are not random. Your life is not chaos. You are the nexus where energy becomes embodiment, where code becomes creation. When the 4 align within you, something extraordinary begins. Life stops feeling like a series of unrelated events and starts to feel like a conversation. You begin to read the universe like a language. Patterns emerge, synchronicities multiply, resistance fades. The world doesn't change, you do. And from that shift, reality responds. This is the hidden architecture that ancient mystics once guarded, the sacred symmetry embedded in medicine wheels, temple altars, esoteric diagrams, and sacred texts, not to control others, but to awaken themselves, to remember how to walk the inner temple, to become creators of coherence in a world addicted to fragmentation. You are not here to memorize dogma, you are here to activate remembrance, and that remembrance begins now, in how you treat your body, in how you honor your feelings, in how you direct your mind, in how you expand your spirit. There is no waiting. There is no permission slip. There is only this breath and what you choose to align with through it. So breathe deeply. Feel your feet press into the earth. Feel the water stirring in your belly, the fire awakening in your chest, the air circulating through your crown. You are not becoming the code. You are the code. You always were. And as you step back into this knowing, into the symmetry that was never lost, but simply silenced, you will find that the world around you begins to mirror your shift, not because it has changed, but because your vision has. You stop seeing problems and start seeing patterns. You stop waiting for permission and start moving with purpose. You stop identifying with the illusion of separation and start embodying the reality of resonance. Remember, the code does not demand perfection. It invites participation. It invites curiosity, compassion, courage. It whispers in your dreams and waits in your silence. It speaks in the tongue of archetype and lives in the temple of your breath. And now, as this journey of remembering comes full circle, ask yourself gently, what will I embody today? Which code within me is asking to be heard? Where in my life can I return to coherence, not through force, but through remembrance? Because coherence is not the absence of challenge, it is the alignment of purpose. And when your body, heart, mind, and spirit speak the same truth, the universe listens, it responds, it bends, not to your ego, but to your essence, not as reward, but as reflection. So let the illusion fall, let the code rise. Let your life become the living glyph of the sacred four, earth, water, fire, air, embodied through you. As you walk forward, not in fear, but in knowing, you were never lost. You were simply remembering the way back.